Chapter 1041. Shen Hong saw that Jing Yunjiao agreed so readily, and he trusted him a little. The nurse next to him was getting more and more disdainful. She felt that handsome Shen had met a swindler. This hospital was extremely famous in Jingju. It had the best equipment and treatment methods in all aspects. Because it was Shen Tong who was hospitalized this time, the nurses in the hospital paid more attention to him. Shen Tong's son, Shen Hong, had become the most popular patient's family member in the hospital in a short time. Almost all the young nurses would take the opportunity to chat with Shen Hong. She didn't expect that she would see handsome Shen being deceived today. After these three people left, she had to properly advise Shen Hong. After the nurse cast a concerned look at Shen Hong, she reluctantly left the ward. The few of them chatted a little more. Xu Yuantarek also wanted to inquire about Shen Tong's past, so he kept asking questions. However, the more he asked, the more he felt that Shen Tong was admirable. Pregnant at a young age and living alone abroad, it was incredible to raise a child like this. Moreover, although this Shen Hong is young, he knows a lot of truth. He knows a lot about the knowledge of various countries. He speaks clearly and logically. Moreover, at a young age, he has published many papers on psychology and won many awards. In addition, he has also studied criminal psychology and case detection abroad, which surprised him a little. Not to mention Xu Yuantarek was shocked. Even Jing Yunjiao didn't expect that Shen Hong, who looked so gentle, would study such a stimulating profession. Do you want to be a policeman in the future? I'm afraid you have to be good at martial arts. Xu Yuantarek was in a good mood and said with a smile. Uncle, don't worry. I learned fighting, judo, taekwondo, and other martial arts abroad. I also have some understanding of guns and knives. Those things can't stop me. As long as I don't meet a martial arts master, I can protect myself. Shen Hong also felt that chatting with Xu Yuantarek had broadened his horizons, so his answer was very straightforward. When he said this, Jing Yunjiao and Xiao Haiqing couldn't help but exclaim. They didn't see it. When they first saw Shen Hong, both of them felt that he was a young scholar. Xu Yuantarek nodded approvingly. Amazing. Other than that, what are your hobbies? It's nothing special. When I'm free, I climb mountains, run, swim, or watch the stars to release my stress. But seeing mommy like this, I feel a little regretful. If I had been a doctor back then, I might have been able to use my own judgment to understand her situation. And it's a pity that the mentors I know are all forensic specialists. Shen Hong shook his head with some regret. You don't have to blame yourself. I didn't expect things to turn out this way at that time. However, I heard that you know a forensic instructor. It seems that you have done some research in forensic science. Xu Yuantarek was deeply interested. I roughly know some basic knowledge. I learned it to solve cases. Although Shen Hong said modestly, he did not hide the confidence in his eyes. In the past, he did want to be a doctor, but later, he participated in a lot of detective games abroad and read a lot of detective novels. Gradually, he became interested in solving cases and solving mysteries. In his mother's words, no matter what he wanted to do, he should do it if he liked. There was no harm in learning more. Therefore, he was very free to develop his career abroad. In addition to professional things, he also learned a little about most of the things that interested him. Chapter 1042. Xu Yuantarek praised Shen Hong even more. Have you ever thought about returning to China after graduation? Uncle can help you in this regard. As long as your ability is up to par, I can definitely transfer you to the department you want to go to. Xu Yuantarek asked directly. There's no need to trouble Uncle. Actually, I've already sent my resume here before I return to China. As long as I graduate, I can immediately go to work. Shen Hong refused. Although he and his mother lived abroad for many years, they had no choice at the time. If they were in China, the mother and son would not be able to live a peaceful life. However, so much time had passed, and many things had become dull. Naturally, they had to return to their roots. Jing Yunjiao listened to the two chatting happily and could not help but feel a little emotional. His uncle might not even be so happy chatting with his own son at home. Shu Yu's temper and personality could not even compare to a finger of Shen Hong's. Oh right, your cousin. Shu Yuantarek wanted to mention Shu Yu, but after thinking carefully, he did not know who was older between the two cousins. Hence, he asked, Hong you're 21 years old, right? What month were you born in? He had won so many awards at such a young age and even graduated early. He was simply a genius. September, Shen Hong said directly. September? Shu Yuantarek was a little surprised. He did not expect the two cousins to be in the same month. He immediately shouted in his heart, what day is September? I'm a day younger than my cousin. I was born in the early morning of the 16th. Actually, it should only be a few hours difference. Shen Hong also knew of Shu Yu's existence. When Shu Yuantarek heard this, he was even more shocked. Shu Yu was born around 8 o'clock in the evening on the 15th. After all, he was a father, so he remembered very clearly. However, he did not expect Shen Hong and Shu Yu to be born in such a short period of time. Furthermore, looking at the extent of his maturity, the one in front of him was more like an older brother. However, in just a few hours, the difference in temperament was too great. Yu's grades were poor since he was young. He even lost his face to get into this university. It was not an exaggeration to say that Shen Hong knew everything from the sky to the earth. The former was well versed in eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling. As for the latter, thinking of this, he really wanted to send his son back to the furnace to be remade. You guys haven't met yet, right? When your mother recovers, she should visit the Shu family more often. Your cousin is ignorant and incompetent. With your temperament, you can also guide him, Shu Yuantarek said. Okay, I also want to visit uncle and aunt more often in the future and thank you on behalf of my mother, Shen Hong quickly said. What are you thanking me for? Shu Yuantarek smiled casually. Ever since I was young, my mommy always said that it's all thanks to auntie's help. Uncle and auntie have always been kind to us. I remember it all. Shen Hong was very serious. Shu Yuantarek's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He turned his head to look at the woman on the bed. He didn't know if it was because Shen Tong looked familiar, but when he looked at her again, there was a sense of familiarity. It was strange. However, perhaps it was because the two sisters, Shen Tong and Shen Shi, were somewhat similar. While they were chatting, the door to the ward opened and a woman walked in with some fruits in her hands. Several people turned their heads to look and met Shen Shi's seemingly surprised gaze. Shu Yuantarek frowned subconsciously. He felt a little uncomfortable. It seemed that Shen Shi was a little strange when she came. Jing Yunjiao felt that Shen Shi's smile was a little different from usual. Usually, even if she didn't like her, she would still act like she was looking at her daughter. However, at this time, her smile was a little stiff, as if she had undergone plastic surgery. Chapter 1043. Shen Shi walked in with her things. Although Shen Hong hadn't seen his aunt since he came back to China, he had seen her photo. Therefore, he hurried to greet her, feeling a little strange. Why didn't his uncle and aunt come together if they were husband and wife? Moreover, it seemed that his aunt didn't expect his uncle to come at all. Aunt, you're here too? I was chatting with my uncle. Shen Hong smiled. Oh, really? What did you talk about? Shen Shi smiled, and a trace of judgment flashed in her eyes. Her hands were clenched tightly in secret, and her heart was filled with hatred. Shen Shi's life was really too big. In the past, even though she wanted to deal with this younger sister of hers, they were still related by blood. She had never thought of letting her die. As long as she lived her life peacefully and didn't steal the glory and everything that belonged to her, then everything would be fine. However, she just didn't listen and insisted on coming back from abroad. She insisted on showing her face in public and opening a beauty salon. Of all the people she could work with, she just had to choose Jing Yunjiao. Not only that, she even wanted to go to the Shu family. She had hinted to her a long time ago. She hadn't let her step into the Shu family for 3 whole years. Didn't she know it in her heart? Therefore, this time, she wanted her to die. However, she didn't expect that after such a big car accident, she would only fall into a coma and attract Shen Hong. We didn't talk much. My uncle asked me how my life was abroad. He also said that when my mother recovered, he would let me and my son accompany her often. Shen Hong's tone was somewhat affectionate. He and his mother didn't have any other relatives. In addition, his mother had been talking about his aunt in front of him all these years. Therefore, he really respected this aunt in his heart. She gritted her teeth and smiled. Okay, we'll wait until your mother recovers. Shen Hong smiled. Xu Yuantarek didn't have much to say when Shi came. The same went for Jing Yunjiao and Xiao Haiqing. The room was inevitably a little awkward. Therefore, after a while, the three of them were ready to leave. There were surveillance cameras everywhere in the room, so they didn't have to worry that Shi would do something bad to Shen Tong in front of others. Jiao, why do you like Shen Tong? Xu Yuantarek asked on the way back. Auntie Tong treats people very well and is more sincere. When she looks at someone, it makes you feel like she's listening to you seriously. She's very considerate of other people's faces, but at the same time, she also has her own thoughts. She's a woman who looks weak on the surface, but is actually very strong. Jing Yunjiao thought about it and gave a serious evaluation. What about Shi? Why don't you like her? Xu Yuantarek asked again. Jing Yunjiao pursed his lips and hesitated. After a while, he said, there are some things that I didn't want to tell you. After all, you are husband and wife, but I think it's necessary to remind you. In the past, she was afraid that her uncle and Shi were deeply in love. She could deal with the small conflicts between her and Shi, but if it was a life-threatening conflict, it would make her uncle sad. Moreover, she didn't have any evidence, so she didn't dare to tell him directly. Moreover, she had always been used to dealing with trouble by herself. Even if she had to borrow someone else's hand, she wouldn't directly entrust the matter to others. Therefore, she subconsciously kept it a secret. Not long after I came to the capital, I already knew about Shi. When I went to Aunt Tong's beauty salon, I happened to see a crazy fan attacking Aunt Tong. Aunt Tong also said that this wasn't the first time. Later, in the car, I met a person who injected poison into the driver. It almost killed everyone in the car, but there was no evidence to prove that she did it. At that time, I didn't think too much about it. Chapter 1044. The reason I knew about she was from Aunt Tong. At that time, Grandpa and I bumped into the sisters at the mall. Aunt Tong felt that Shi's reaction was strange, so she asked me if I knew her sister. At that time, I felt strange. As a daughter-in-law, she should meet her father-in-law even if he didn't like her. But this matter was denied by Shi. She insisted that she wasn't feeling well, but after that incident, Haiqing and I almost drank poisoned wine at Aunt Tong's place. At this point, Jing Yunjiao chuckled, his eyes cold. Then shouldn't you be suspicious of Shen Tong? Xu Yuantarek frowned. Eldest uncle, Shen Tong and I are business partners. My death wouldn't benefit Shen Tong. Moreover, although Shen Tong and I had only met a few times at that time, we got along very well. Another point is, unless Shen Tong is very stupid, she wouldn't use such a method because if Xiao Haiqing and I died, she would be the first unlucky person to bear the brunt. She was also a public figure before, so she would definitely lose her reputation, and even the fact that she had a child out of wedlock would be exposed. Also, this wine was a gift from Shi. When she passed it to Shen Tong, she specifically said that it was to thank me for taking care of Grandpa. The fruit wine was specially brewed with aconite. Fortunately, I could smell it. Not only that, after the incident, when Shi found out that I didn't drink the wine, she immediately took it back personally. After Jing Yunjiao finished speaking, Xiao Haiqing nodded her head as if it was true. Xu Yuantarek took a deep breath. His eyes were deep, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. She actually did something to Zhao before? But at that time, Shi shouldn't have known her at all. Why would she think of targeting a little girl who had just arrived in the capital with no background? But if he said that she was innocent, it would be awkward. The Xu family could find all kinds of medicinal herbs and had a lot of pharmacology books. She liked to read books and had done a lot of research on medicinal cuisine. She was indeed capable of poisoning people, Uncle knows. He will investigate her background carefully. Shu Yuantarek nodded, feeling a little irritated. Although he didn't share a bed with this woman, no matter what, this person was still his wife and someone by his side. After being together for so many years, he had even thought that one day, the two of them would silently die of old age together. However, he didn't expect that this seemingly gentle and kind woman was most likely a wolf, tiger, or leopard lurking by his side. I had someone investigate her before, but they only found out that she had called a few people many times, and those people were the fans who attacked Aunt Tong. Those fans are either dead, in prison, or in a mental hospital. Uncle, you can start from there. Although it can't prove that she did something bad to me, at least we can be sure that she was cruel to her sister. Jing Yunjiao said. Shu Yuantarek was surprised and nodded. According to what you said, this accident is also very likely to be done by her. Shu Yuantarek was a little shocked. It's not likely, it's certain. Jing Yunjiao didn't intend to hide it and continued, in 3 years, Aunt Tong had more than 5 accidents. How unlucky a person must be to encounter so many coincidences. And it's very strange that the situation this time is more serious. It seems that she deliberately wanted to kill her. In my opinion, in the past, Shunshi seemed to want to drive her away and oppress her. Now, she wants to make her disappear, and the reason for her to disappear. Uncle, on the day of the accident, Aunt Tong wanted to go shopping first and then celebrate my birthday. Chapter 1045. Shu Yuantarek's face became more and more dignified, and there was a cloud of confusion in his heart that he couldn't explain. Even if Shunshi hated Jing Yunjiao, it was impossible for her to vent her anger on Shentong because of this. Therefore, according to the situation in the past few years, if the accident was really caused by her, her purpose was not to attack Jing Yunjiao, but to prevent Shentong from going to the Shu family. But why? Along the way, Shu Yuantarek was particularly depressed. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. After returning, according to the phone clues provided by Jing Yunjiao, he immediately sent someone to investigate. In the end, it was just as Jing Yunjiao had predicted. The people on the list were all locked up because they had attacked Shentong in the past. They were all so-called crazy fans. In this day and age, even young idols wouldn't encounter so many strange people and incidents. How could Shentong, who had retreated from the industry for more than 20 years, encounter such strange people? Immediately, he increased his strength to deal with those people. However, he found that although these people looked like hoodlums, their teeth were very tight. No matter how he threatened or tempted them, they did not respond. What kind of ability did Shunshi have to be able to do this? Originally, Shu Yuantarek just wanted to prove Jing Yunjiao's words, but now, he couldn't help but want to investigate deeper. Immediately, he turned his target to those people's families. Strangely, he found that the men who attacked Shentong had one thing in common. That was, the father and the daughter depended on each other and had a very good relationship. After the father was locked up or sent to the mental hospital, the son or daughter had disappeared. These people's families were very poor, and they had almost no relatives or friends. After they disappeared, no outsider called the police. It was as if they had never appeared. Shu Yuantarek's heart couldn't help but sink. This matter was really getting more and more complicated. These things were investigated by Shu Yuantarek, and Jing Yunjiao could also save a lot of effort. Early the next morning, he went to the Red-Crowned Crane Hall from the hospital with Shun Hong. As soon as Jing Yunjiao arrived at the Red-Crowned Crane Hall, the old doctors immediately became spirited. After dealing with their patients, they hurriedly came over to greet him. Dr. Jing, I met a patient a few days ago. She has been suffering from asthma for many years. Every day, she coughs until morning and can't sleep. That woman has been sick for 10 years. Do you want to take a look at her? Little Dr. Jing, please take a look at mine first. It's cold and damp paralysis in my meridians, causing my meridians to contract and be unable to turn around. I've used aconite. Can you check if it's accurate? Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched, and Shen Hong jumped in fright. When the patients saw the reaction of the old doctors, they looked around curiously. They had long heard that a very young doctor had come to the immortal Crane Hall. Her medical skills were especially good. It seemed that it was this person. She was really beautiful. Old doctors, you're not allowed to cause any more trouble. Otherwise, I'll leave right now. Jing Yunzhao's face turned cold as he threw out a sentence. As soon as he said this, the old doctors around him instantly fell silent and didn't say a word. Little Dr. Jing, you're too lazy. You've been on holiday for quite some time. You've only come now. Everyone misses you very much. One of them said with a dry laugh. Jing Yunzhao exhaled. She was absolutely amiable to the old doctors. The main reason was that this group of old doctors was too indecent. If she didn't get angry, they would keep asking questions. Their own standards were not low. Many of the questions they asked actually had answers in their hearts, but they just liked to test her. It was as if they wanted to prove whether she was omnipotent or not. Every time, they would make her spend extra time to solve some problems that didn't require any effort at all. It was simply unbearable. Chapter 1046. Jing Yunzhao walked towards her seat, and the few old people followed her obediently, not feeling the slightest bit of embarrassment. In their eyes, it was enough that Jing Yunzhao had medical skills. They were friends who knew each other through medicine. Age and whatnot were just floating clouds. It's just that if Jing Yunzhao knew what they were thinking, she would have to remind them. Thinking back to the first day she came here, their attitudes weren't like this. Shen Hong followed behind and was directly ignored by a few old doctors. As soon as Jing Yunzhao sat down, the old doctors immediately sorted out the recent difficult and miscellaneous diseases and asked her for advice. They talked about some things about yin and yang. Shen Hong was confused. He felt as if he had walked into a very strange brainwashing organization. And in this organization, Jing Yunzhao was obviously the boss. A few people gathered around her and listened to her talk about medicinal herbs that they didn't understand. After a while, they all nodded their heads in understanding, looking as if they had learned a lot from her. If it were not for the fact that there were some patients here at this time, he might really think that these people were all hired by Jing Yunzhao. While Jing Yunzhao was explaining, there were a few apprentices who took a look at the patients first. After they were done, the old doctors went up and diagnosed a few patients and wrote prescriptions. Taking advantage of the fact that there weren't many people in the clinic, they continued their discussion. Shen Hong sat next to her and watched quietly. The more he watched, the more he felt that Jing Yunzhao had a very special light. When they were talking about other things yesterday, Jing Yunzhao was very calm and very low-key. But at this moment, she was very flamboyant and spoke with assurance. He could feel a love and obsession for medical skills in her eyes. At this moment, Shen Hong had already believed most of it. Jing Yunzhao spent the whole morning communicating with others. After a simple meal in the afternoon, she began to treat the patients. At this time, in front of her was a man with a swollen head and face. The man's eyes were narrowed into thin slits. It should be difficult for him to even see things. After Jing Yunzhao quickly examined the man, she immediately asked someone to boil the medicine. After a while, something like mud was smeared on the man's face. It looked very funny. Many patients saw it and could not help laughing. This treatment method was like a woman applying a mask. It was very funny. Obviously, the man was not in a good mood, but he should have endured it with the intention of trying. But not long after the medicine was applied, Shen Hong found that the man's face seemed to be steaming. There was sweat dripping down the ointment. When the young medicine boy saw it, he quickly changed the medicine again, and the cycle repeated. After 7 or 8 times in a row, 2 hours had passed. At this time, the face that was so swollen that he couldn't see anything had actually become very handsome. His complexion was ruddy as usual, and his eyes were bright and spirited. It was as if he had become a different person. Suddenly, Shen Hong was speechless. From the diagnosis to the medicine boiling, he saw it all. It was absolutely impossible to fake. Jing Yunzhao indeed had the ability of a divine doctor. No wonder these old doctors were so polite to her. They even bowed their heads to ask her for advice. Other than this patient, Jing Yunzhao also treated a few others at the same time. Some of them immediately saw results, but there were also some who still needed more treatment. Even so, the words she said made the patients nod their heads in agreement, Each and every one of them was very sincere and polite. Recently, there were many patients in the red-crowned crane hall. One of them was because of Jing Yunjiao. The news of her curing several stubborn diseases had spread. Because it was next to a big hospital, many people chose to come and take a look. Shen Hong was completely convinced. Before he left, he was even affected. He stared at Jing Yunjiao in amazement and admiration. His mood could not calm down for a long time. Chapter 1047. Jing Yunjiao, on the other hand, was acting as usual. Her attitude was nothing out of the ordinary. Even after leaving the red-crowned crane hall, her temperament was obviously restrained. Other than her outstanding appearance, her low-key appearance made her seem like an ordinary little girl. "Little cousin, I'll have to trouble you with my mother," Shen Hong said quickly. "Then stop taking the medicine when you go back. I'll go over tomorrow morning to officially start the treatment, but I'm afraid the hospital won't give in so easily," Jing Yunjiao said. Shen Hong nodded. The next morning, Jing Yunjiao arrived at the hospital early. However, when she arrived, she saw a young nurse running in another direction at lightning speed. She had only been in the ward for 2 or 3 minutes when a large wave of doctors and nurses barged in. Shen Tong, who was lying on the hospital bed, still did not look good. Shen Hong was already prepared, but when he saw so many doctors coming again, he was a little dissatisfied. Just after Jing Yunjiao said that she could cure his mother, many nurses had already tried to persuade him again and again. He knew that these nurses had good intentions, so he did not show much resistance. Last night, when he suggested to the doctors to stop taking the medicine, several doctors and nurses were very angry and even scolded Jing Yunjiao. However, due to his own insistence, these people could not do anything. They did not expect that they would cause trouble when Jing Yunjiao appeared. "You're the little girl who claims to be a doctor." A middle-aged man stared at Jing Yunjiao and asked in dissatisfaction. "What do you want?" Jing Yunjiao frowned slightly. This group of people did not have the ability to wake Shen Tong up at all. Since that was the case, it was reasonable to let someone with the ability try. Although as a doctor, it was true that they hated this kind of behavior, most of the hospitals now followed the wishes of the patient's family. Besides, although the medicine that the hospital prescribed for Shen Tong was to nourish her internal organs, it was actually 30% poisonous. The daily infusion had a great impact. If she did not wake up in a short period of time, the medicine would have to be stopped in the future. What they cared about now was the medicine and the money, not Shen Tong's body. "Little girl, how can you harm people at such a young age? Do you know what you're doing? This brother Shen has just returned from overseas and doesn't know much about the domestic affairs. How dare you use this to deceive him? If something happens to Shen Tong, who's going to take responsibility?" "You," the leading doctor said angrily. "How can you be sure that I'm lying to him? According to what you said, can I also say that your hospital is a bully by giving patients things that they don't need?" Jing Yunjiao chuckled and replied casually. If he didn't use acupuncture, he would definitely use medicine, but he definitely wouldn't use so much, and the amount wouldn't be so large. This group of people more or less wanted to squeeze more money out of others. Most of the time, they felt that eating a little more medicine wouldn't have any effect, so they didn't take it to heart. But in reality, those drugs would slowly accumulate in the body, especially since Shen Tong's body's resistance was relatively weak now. So many drugs would only increase the burden on her body, making it difficult for Seng Jiao to wake up. "Bastard! Are you implying that we should let the patient take the medicine randomly? Where are your parents? Do you believe that we can sue you for slander?" the doctor said angrily. Shen Tong used to be a very famous artist. Recently, many people had heard that Shen Tong was staying in their hospital, so they trusted the hospital more and more. Many people even came to see the doctor. Chapter 1048. The hospital was also very attentive to Yu Shen Tong. After all, if she really woke up in the hospital could use this opportunity to publicize it. Especially since they had already hinted to the reporters that it would be difficult for her to wake up. Regardless of whether she woke up or not, the hospital wouldn't suffer any losses. Jing Yunjiao's appearance was a blow to the hospital's ability. If Shen Tong was really saved by Jing Yunjiao, it would be a slap to the hospital's face. If she didn't wake up, people would definitely say that the hospital wasn't strict enough and allowed the patient to mess around. Jing Yunjiao looked at the aggressive doctor and knew that it was different for him to make a move in someone else's territory. Hence, he said, "Cousin Shin, go and settle the discharge procedures and transfer her to the Red-Crowned Crane Hall." The moment he said that, all the doctors were stunned. They knew about the Red-Crowned Crane Hall. There were many clinics, and the Red-Crowned Crane Hall bore the brunt of it. In the past, the Red-Crowned Crane Hall had a resounding reputation, but it had gradually fallen silent in the past few decades. Naturally, it couldn't be compared to their hospital. In the eyes of many people, relying on manpower to diagnose a pulse wasn't as direct as using medical equipment. Furthermore, the pace of the hospital was getting faster and faster. There weren't many people who could accept a primitive place like the Red-Crowned Crane Hall. Red-Crowned Crane Hall? That kind of place can treat illnesses. I can guarantee that if you send the patient there, the patient will die without a doubt. The doctor directly threatened them with disdain. Did they think that they could steal their jobs with just a few words? Based on what? Hearing that someone insulted the Red-Crowned Crane Hall, Jing Yunjiao's face instantly turned cold. "You're saying that the Red-Crowned Crane Hall is a scammer?" Jing Yunjiao glanced at the badge on his chest and continued, "Dr. Fang, right? Please remember this sentence. If Shen Tong doesn't die and wakes up after being transferred away, please take back what you said. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Also, I think that if there wasn't Immortal Crane Hall, there wouldn't be a person like you in this world. When your ancestors were still alive, there weren't any foreign things in this world. It was all thanks to the deceiving people that you're talking about to cure and save people." Jing Yunjiao was also impressed by the medical skills of foreign countries. He had also studied it himself. Although he wasn't proficient in it, he couldn't help but admire those exquisite surgical methods. They were fast and thorough. However, he never felt that it was better than Chinese medicine. The charm of national healers was far more mysterious and magical than what people in this world knew. It was just that many of them had lost their inheritance. Dr. Fang's face turned ugly. He didn't expect a little girl to be so stubborn. "Little brother Shen, you have to think carefully. If you transfer to Immortal Crane Hall and something happens to the patient, we won't be responsible," the doctor said with a serious face. Shen Hong nodded his head. "I've already made my decision. Since your hospital doesn't allow others to interfere, then I'll transfer my mommy to another hospital. Director Fang, I'll go through the procedures now." Dr. Fang held his breath when he heard that. His original intention was to let this little girl back off. But now, the one who backed off was actually them. "Do as you wish." Me. Dr. Fang gritted his teeth in anger. He snorted and turned to leave. Some of the other doctors saw this and felt uncomfortable. They looked at Jing Yunjiao as if they wanted to eat her up. Jing Yunjiao didn't mind. Some people did have good intentions, so there was no need to kill the whole boat full of people with one pole. Shen Hong's procedures were done very quickly. After only 2 hours, the patient was transferred from the hospital. Chapter 1049. Shen Hong's appearance was outstanding, and he treated people humbly. During his time in the hospital, he had won the hearts of the nurses and some female doctors. Now that he had listened to Jing Yunjiao and taken his mother away, many people were disappointed. Moreover, since Shen Tong came to the hospital, some reporters had heard about the situation and stayed near the ward, hoping to get some information. At this time, these doctors were angry, and some of them lost some of their morals and directly scolded in front of the reporters. "Shen Tong is so pitiful. She was in a coma in an accident, and it's already very difficult to save her life. But she didn't expect her son to be cheated by his little girlfriend. I heard that the medical fees were too high, and it's cheaper to buy Chinese medicine, so he transferred her to those quack clinics that only know how to cheat people." As soon as this was said, the reporters immediately exclaimed that they had found a treasure. Although Shen Tong had not been in the entertainment circle for a long time, She was still a person who had acted in classics. She still had appeal and influence. If this news was released, there would be no need to worry about clicks. Jing Yunjiao did not expect that his doctor would become an insensible and stingy girlfriend. At this time, after sending the patient to the Red-Crowned Crane Hall, the first round of acupuncture began. The Red-Crowned Crane Hall was very large, and there were independent rooms for the patients. Every day, there was a small medical assistant who cleaned and disinfected the room. In terms of environment, it was better than those big hospitals. Shen Hong was originally worried that there would be no one to help him take care of his mother, but the truth was that most of the time, there was no need for him to intervene at all. Those medical assistants were very sensible and mature. They knew how to treat patients better than he did. Every time Jing Yunjiao performed acupuncture, a few old doctors would fight to be the first to observe her technique. Even though Jing Yunjiao was young, her technique was as if she had decades of experience in acupuncture and moxibustion. Naturally, it was the same this time. These old doctors praised Jing Yunjiao, which made Shen Hong feel more at ease. The acupuncture treatment didn't take too long. When it was over, Jing Yunjiao wrote another prescription. At this time, Shen Tong had already regained a bit of consciousness. Chewing and drinking some medicine shouldn't be a problem, but if she wanted to wake up completely, she would have to wait until the third round of acupuncture. That day, Shen Hong also stayed at the Red-Crowned Crane Hall. Jing Yunjiao rarely came to the Red-Crowned Crane Hall for 3 consecutive days, and this group of old guys was very happy. But on the third day, the atmosphere in Immortal Crane Hall was clearly different. "Little Dr. Jing, you're finally here. Look, this morning, there are already a lot of people who are pretending to be sick and wasting time. The real patients are still lining up behind." A few of the old doctors were extremely angry. They did not know where these bastards came from. They came in the middle of the night and occupied the front line. They tried to communicate with the doctors. The colleagues who spoke immediately took out their equipment to film. They were so angry that they wanted to beat them up. Jing Yunjiao coldly glanced at the crowd and found that most of them were holding cameras or small recording equipment. He immediately showed a somewhat disgusted expression. "Are you Shen Hong's girlfriend? You seem to be very familiar with these old doctors. Is that why Shen Tong was transferred here?" However, these reporters didn't have any opinions about Jing Yunjiao's attitude. One of them even went up to him and said. Jing Yunjiao raised his eyebrows. "Are you here to see a doctor or to make trouble?" "Of course I'm here to see a doctor, but it shouldn't affect anything if I ask you a few questions, right?" the other party said. Jing Yunjiao chuckled. "You said it won't affect anything? Then I'll have to trouble you to take a good look at the patients behind you. They came early enough, but you blocked them from seeing the patients. How can you say that it won't affect them? It seems that your bottom line is a little low." Chapter 1050. Being questioned by a little girl like Jing Yunjiao, the other party was a little embarrassed, but after thinking about it, she still said, "We are also doing this for work, I hope you can understand." Moreover, Shen Tong was once a public figure after all. Being taken away from the hospital when she was unconscious is very dangerous, isn't it? Everyone just wants to know the truth. Truth. Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but laugh mockingly. There were always people who stood on the moral high ground, and in order to seek the so-called truth, they would hurt a person they didn't even know or understand. Want to know the truth? Okay, no problem, but it's impossible now, because we still have to treat patients. Just now, you said it was for work, but so are we. Not only for work, but also for the health of others. After I treat all the patients here, when I have time, you can ask anything you want. Jing Yunjiao was a little angry at first, but after thinking about it carefully, it wasn't worth it. "You are a doctor." The female reporter didn't believe him at all. "Whether I am or not, you'll know in a while. Now, please take 2 steps back and stand at the side. Don't block the seat, okay?" Jing Yunjiao glanced at her indifferently and sat down in her seat. Because of these reporters, there were a lot of patients today, so she had to help first. Immortal Crane Hall operated 24 hours a day, but every night, the apprentice doctors were on duty. If there was an emergency, they would go to the backyard to inform the senior doctors. And the apprentices of Immortal Crane Hall were definitely stronger than ordinary doctors in other places. Because of the great pressure, they learned a lot. More importantly, almost all of them had touched all kinds of medicinal herbs since they were young and had grown up watching their masters treat illnesses. Just like yesterday, a few senior doctors asked her if she wanted to take in a few registered disciples to teach them. The children here lived simple lives. They were either the children of the Jing family's side branch, the juniors of the senior doctors' families or relatives, and some of them were poor but talented orphans. In the backyard, there were some senior doctors and senior doctors who couldn't continue to practice medicine. They usually taught these children to read and write, memorizing all kinds of medical books from childhood. If they didn't have enough patience or a bad character, they wouldn't stay, because for the future patients, the doctor's character was very important. After Jing Yunjiao sat down, the reporter pursed his lips, feeling a sense of guilt that he didn't dare to blaspheme. After thinking for a bit, he waved his work pass in front of Jing Yunjiao and said, "I'm Mimi, remember my name. When we return, you must answer my questions." After saying that, she chose to retreat to the back and wait. However, even though the reporter named Mimi chose to retreat, there were still some people with no professional ethics who insisted on going forward to ask for clarification. They pretended to be patients and asked all sorts of questions. "You are a doctor. How many years have you read medical books? Pulse diagnosis? And as far as I know, to practice medicine you need a certificate. Do you have one?" A man in front of her stretched out his hand and kept asking. Jing Yunjiao pressed his hand on the man's wrist without a trace, curling his lips. He wasn't in a hurry. After a while, he slowly wrote down a prescription and said, "Bad breath prescription, go get the medicine yourself." Hearing this, a trace of anger flashed across the man's face. And the one called Mimi just now couldn't help but smile. People of the same trade were enemies, she didn't ask, naturally she didn't want others to succeed. The male reporter in front of Jing Yunjiao saw that Jing Yunjiao ignored him. He was really angry. Looking at the many cubicles, he didn't think and prepared to rush in. Chapter 1051. Jing Yunjiao only glanced at him from the corner of her eyes before she casually picked up a pen from the table and threw it over. This method of hers could definitely be compared to that of a godly hidden weapon. With a casual throw, the pen directly hit the man's lower back. He instantly felt a sharp pain and fell to the ground with a bang, scaring everyone. The other party struggled on the ground twice and turned to glare at Jing Yunjiao. "You fucking hand. It's just a pen. You can write a news article and see who will believe it." Jing Yunjiao smiled and did not take it to heart at all. She said, "Also, it's not good for you to barge into those rooms rashly. Don't think that other people have a temper like mud. Okay, next." Jing Yunjiao unhurriedly knocked on the ornament-like bell on the table, and the medicine boy immediately led the next person forward. The male reporter just now was not reconciled and wanted to go forward again. Suddenly, he felt that his whole body was very stiff. His waist was as if it was going to break. He could not move at all. My waist," he quickly shouted. His companion next to him saw that he was pretending to tease people. He was so anxious that he sweated profusely. "Call an ambulance. It's really painful. Call an ambulance in the clinic." This was a strange way of saying it. Jing Yunjiao did not care about him at all. At this time, another reporter appeared in front of him. He opened his mouth and was about to speak. Jing Yunjiao suddenly sneered. "Do you really have the time to care about other people's affairs? Brother, your illness is not light. You usually smoke a lot, right? What a pity." This sentence made the reporter stunned. "You? What do you mean?" Recently, he always felt a little uncomfortable. Sometimes, he felt a little difficult to breathe and his throat was a little uncomfortable. Because of work, he often had to stay up late. It was normal for him to stay up all night to follow up on the news of artists. At night, he smoked when he had nothing to do. Therefore, some time ago, he specially went for a lung checkup. The results were very reassuring. Other than some dark shadows, there were no other pathological changes. In addition, His smoking frequency had also improved recently, so there shouldn't be any more problems. But for some reason, she still felt flustered recently. To put it simply, your current condition is very serious. I believe that you should be able to feel it yourself. The larynx governs breathing and belongs to the meridian circulation of the lungs, liver, and kidneys. However, you have internal injuries to the lungs and spleen, causing the spleen to lose its healthy circulation, causing the lungs to lose its clarity and solemnity, causing the dampness and turbidity to congeal in the larynx, causing the disease. Because of the foreign body in your larynx, there are some problems with your voice, which even affects your breathing. If you still don't understand, then I don't mind using another term to tell you, and that is throat cancer. Jing Yunjiao's attitude was serious. Since he was indeed a patient, he was naturally more polite. When the other party heard this, he opened his mouth, but his mind suddenly went blank. Recently, my throat has been feeling uncomfortable. Was he going to die? Can it be cured? Subconsciously, his survival instincts asked. It can be cured, but are you sure you want to be treated here? Jing Yunjiao chuckled, his tone carrying a hint of mockery. This disease was not terminal. The situation of the person in front of her was not very serious. If it was Western medicine, surgery could be done. When the time came, some parts of the larynx would be removed. She did not know the details, but she knew that if the surgery was really done, the ability to speak would not be preserved. Although the survival rate was high, there was a possibility of recurrence and metastasis. Chapter 1052. The person in front of him had a special occupation. Once the surgery was done, he would probably have to change his profession. It would be impossible for him to continue holding a microphone and doing interviews everywhere. Jing Yunjiao smiled. The person's heart shook violently, feeling a little guilty. He was here for an interview today, and it didn't look good. Now, this little girl was even treating him. Even though he didn't know if it was real or fake, he just felt that it wasn't a lie. He was well aware of his own body's condition. I'll go check it out first, the person said in a daze. He did not want to stay for the interview and left the clinic with his things. Jing Yunjiao raised his eyebrows and did not stop him. The other interviewers could not help but feel nervous. Wasn't this girl a little too strange? Two people went up to cause trouble. One shouted that her back hurt as if she was possessed, and the other was so depressed that he did not even want to work. For a moment, everyone learned from the reporter named Mimi. It was better to wait and see. They all stepped back and let the patients come forward. Jing Yunjiao was very patient. He looked, listened, asked, and felt the pulse. What he said made sense, and the people could not help but nod. This situation made it easier for them to be immersed in it. It was as if they were brainwashed. Unknowingly, they did not feel annoyed and waited obediently for 2 to 3 hours. After Jing Yunjiao finished seeing the patient, he went to give Shentong the last acupuncture treatment. After the acupuncture treatment, the person slowly woke up. Shentong, who was guarding the room, was overjoyed when he saw this. His gratitude and admiration for Jing Yunjiao increased. Shentong had been conscious since the first acupuncture treatment, but it was shallow. Now that he was awake, he was not surprised by where he was. Yunjiao. Thank you. Shentong's voice was hoarse and heavy. Jing Yunjiao smiled and shook his head. It's good that you're okay. Little cousin, does mommy have any sequelae? The accident was too serious. I'm still worried. Shentong asked politely. It's fine. Aunt Tong is quite lucky. She just needs to recuperate. You can let Aunt Tong stay here for the time being. It'll be more convenient for her to get the medicine, Jing Yunjiao replied. When Shentong heard her son calling Jing Yunjiao little cousin, she was stunned for a moment. However, Jing Yunjiao had already told her that she had acknowledged her biological grandfather and that Elder Shu was her biological grandfather, so she immediately understood. I just heard a noise outside. Did something happen? Shentong breathed a sigh of relief and asked curiously. Jing Yunjiao glanced at him, then turned to look at Aunt Tong, and said, The news of your transfer has been spread to the reporters, and now they've come to Crane Hall. Even if you didn't ask, I still wanted to ask for your help. No matter how eloquent she was, no matter how much she said, it was of no use to the group of people outside. The only way was for Shentong to step in. As long as the people outside saw that she was awake, they would naturally shut their mouths. When Shentong and Shenhong heard that people came to cause trouble because of the transfer, they immediately felt guilty. Hong open the door and let the reporters in. I'll explain it to them. Shentong ordered. Mommy, your body. Is it okay? Shenhong frowned. It's fine. I know that you've been feeding me, massaging me, and injecting me for the past few days. I just can't respond. Now that I finally have some strength, I should do something. Shentong nodded and patted Shenhong's hand twice to comfort him. Chapter 1053. Since Shentong had spoken, Shenhong didn't try to stop her. Furthermore, if it weren't for Jing Yunjiao and the Crane Hall, his mother wouldn't have been able to wake up so quickly and still be so energetic. Shenhong and Jing Yunjiao walked out together. When the reporters saw them, they immediately swarmed over and asked Shenhong, "You're Shenhong, right? Why did you transfer Shentong here? How's her condition now?" Shenhong was startled by the crazed appearance of the reporters. He couldn't help but glance at Jing Yunjiao. Jing Yunjiao scanned the crowd and pointed at the reporter named Mimi who was stuck at the back. He said, "I said that you can ask a few questions. You can do it. As for the others, don't answer them." When the crowd heard this, they were a little unhappy. However, since they were all present, as long as they could hear it, it was the same. Thus, they didn't stop her. Mimi didn't expect Jing Yunjiao to actually let her interview him. She felt a little guilty. In order to dig up the latest news about Shentong's current situation, she had come in the middle of the night. There were other reporters and staff members with her. She had indeed delayed Shentong's treatment. Originally, she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. After all, she had been like this for the past few years. The competition for jobs was fierce, and if she wanted to survive, she had to use all means. However, in those 2 to 3 hours, she saw this little girl treat patients and immediately felt a sense of inferiority. Thinking back to when she had just graduated, she also wanted to be a righteous reporter in the future. She wanted to expose the truth about those pitiful people or various matters. However, as time passed, her original intention slowly changed. She eventually became an entertainment reporter. Inside the clinic, the doctors, apprentices, and medical apprentices all had their own duties. Before they came, it was peaceful and quiet, giving people a sense of holiness. But now, the atmosphere had changed. Standing here alone, they felt like they had polluted the air. "Thank you." Mimi's heart was filled with emotions as she walked to the front. After thinking for a moment, she asked Shenhong, "Excuse me, you are indeed Shenhong, right?" "That's right." Shenhong nodded. "Is this your girlfriend?" Mimi asked again. Shenhong looked at Jing Yunjiao in shock and smiled. "I'm sorry, but that's not the case. She and my mother are friends, and she's also my cousin. At the same time, she's also a doctor, which is why I believe her." "Then may I know about Miss Shentong's current situation?" "I heard that she has been in a coma," Mimi added. After saying that, everyone looked at Shenhong expectantly. "Of course, but my mother just woke up and can't answer too many of your questions, so I hope you can cooperate a little, okay?" Shenhong's voice was polite and gentle, giving people a good impression of him. In their line of work, they often received some insincere treatment. Although those artists also smiled at them, it was completely different from Shenhong's smile. Sincerity. That kind of politeness and upbringing seemed to come from the bones, making people restrain themselves even more. After a few seconds, these people suddenly felt that something was wrong. Didn't they say that Shentong was in a coma? Moreover, the people from the hospital said that her current situation was still quite dangerous. If she stopped taking her medicine and transferred to another hospital, it would greatly affect Shentong's body. It was very likely that she would never wake up again. But now, Shenhong said that she just woke up. Shentong woke up. Is that true? You mean we can go interview Shentong? Mimi asked in surprise. Chapter 1054. Not only Mimi, but the others also felt that it was too surreal. They almost couldn't resist the urge to rush in. I have to thank my cousin for waking my mother up. She treated my mother with acupuncture every day. Shenhong thanked them and nodded. Seeing is believing. You can go in, but don't make too much noise. Mimi and the others didn't expect that Shenhong would allow them to see the patient. They immediately nodded and Shenhong gestured for them to enter the small room where Shentong was temporarily staying. However, within this group of people, there was a companion of the man who didn't listen to Jing Yunjiao's advice and wanted to barge in. Jing Yunjiao didn't say anything and immediately stopped them. She ordered a few of the medical apprentices to chase them out. If it was before, all the reporters would have been dissatisfied, but it was different now. Jing Yunjiao was only targeting the reporter who wasted the patient's time. Everyone felt that it was only right and proper, and some even rejoiced in others' misfortune. Shentong was leaning against the headboard of the bed. She frowned and drank the medicine brought by the medical assistant. When she saw that someone had come in, she temporarily put the medicine bowl aside. The room wasn't big. It was just a small consultation room with a single bed and a table. However, it was ventilated and sunlight shone in. The room didn't have the musty smell of the patient. On the contrary, there was a type of fragrant grass in the room that made the air particularly fresh and comfortable. When Mimi and the others saw Shentong, they were even more shocked. Shenhong wasn't lying. Miss Shentong, can I interview you? Mimi asked carefully. She knew that Shentong had left the entertainment industry for a long time. After returning to China, many reporters wanted to interview her, but no one succeeded. The only video she appeared in front of the public was recorded by herself to dispel rumors about Xiao Haiqing and Xiao Xiao. Ever since she became a reporter, this was the first time she had seen Shentong up close. She had seen this famous teenager up close. She suddenly understood why the public and many people in the entertainment industry couldn't forget her. It was because she had a unique aura. She was like a piece of beautiful jade that could withstand time. The more time passed, the more charming she became. Moreover, although her son was already so old, Shentong's skin was still very good. Unlike many people in the entertainment industry who were injected with drugs, she was very natural. Even her appearance did not change much. Go ahead and ask. I'll try my best to answer. Shentong nodded politely. When Mimi heard this, her face turned red. Even though the goddess was already in her 40s, her temperament was still mesmerizing. Okay. Mimi took a deep breath and said, when did you wake up? After Miss Jing performed acupuncture on me, Shentong said. Then, did you know that you were originally living in a regular hospital ward? It's like this. Now, there are rumors outside that your son insisted on bringing you here to please his girlfriend and to save money on the medicine. Mimi said carefully. When Shentong heard this, she was a little surprised. My son is a very filial person. Moreover, Miss Jing is not my future daughter-in-law. She just acknowledged her family, so she can be considered a relative of mine and my son. As for this place, although I just woke up and don't know where this place is, from the first day Miss Jing performed acupuncture on me, I felt it. Therefore, I'm very satisfied with this place. If I get sick in the future, I'll definitely look for the doctors here. They take good care of me. Chapter 1055. Hearing Shentong's words, Mimi and the others couldn't help but nod. They had waited here for a long time and indeed felt that the patients here were different from those in big hospitals. This red-crowned crane hall was very large, but it was still very polite to the patients. As soon as the patients entered, the medicine boy would take the initiative to ask them if they wanted to get medicine or see a doctor. Then, he would lead them to some apprentices to determine if it was an emergency and ask about their condition. Simple cold and fever could be treated by the apprentices, while more serious conditions were handed over to the senior doctors. The medicine hall was very quiet and very clean. While the patients were waiting, the medicine boy would ask them about their condition. From the moment they entered to the moment they left, There was almost no confusion on their faces. Instead, they were very relieved. As for those big hospitals, Mimi thought for a moment. She remembered that she had once taken her elderly grandmother there. After entering the hospital, they went upstairs and downstairs several times. She went to various rooms and used various instruments to check her body. She only felt that money flowed like water, but she only spoke a few words with the doctor. Even though the other party's attitude was very good, and she knew that the doctors were very busy, she still felt very disappointed. It was as if she went to the hospital just to spend money and didn't understand her body very well. At this time, everyone present had the same thought. Now that Shentong had come out to refute the rumors, the outside world definitely had nothing to say. However, everyone wanted to take this opportunity to understand a few more words. Thus, under everyone's eager gaze, Mimi opened her mouth and said, "Miss Shentong, have you ever thought of returning to the entertainment industry? I heard that many big directors want to invite you to play some roles." "I've never thought about that. There are so many good actors now, I think there should be many more suitable people than me," Shentong said modestly. Mimi secretly exclaimed in admiration. "Do you still remember that you recorded a video for little Xiao? Are you related to her?" Mimi asked again. Hearing the two words little Xiao, Shentong froze for a moment before realizing that the other party was talking about Xiao Haiqing. She immediately smiled and said, "When I helped her get the audition, I only saw her once. She's a very malleable girl. If she has enough opportunities, she will definitely develop very well. I hope you can take care of her." Shentong knew that Jing Yunjiao and Xiao Haiqing had a good relationship, so she was not stingy with her praise. Moreover, in her opinion, Xiao Haiqing was indeed charming. Mimi nodded and was about to ask a few more questions when Shenhong stopped her. "Sorry, she should be resting now." They were a little disappointed, but after thinking about it, Shentong was lucky to be able to wake up after such a big accident. He really needed to rest now. Only then did they hurriedly leave. Before leaving, Mimi suddenly asked Jing Yunjiao, "That's right, Miss Jing, you're so young, why are your medical skills so good?" "Because my master taught me well. But if you ask me who my master is, I'm afraid it's not convenient for me to answer." Jing Yunjiao chuckled. Although it was cold and indifferent, it made people feel very comfortable. Because she had seen Jing Yunjiao treat patients with her own eyes, Mimi felt that her body was emitting a unique aura. She couldn't help but worship her. "Thank you. Also, I'm sorry. We did some bad things before. Although it was for work, I'll be more careful in the future," Mimi said. Chapter 1056. Jing Yunjiao was a little surprised. In fact, she didn't have a good impression of reporters. It was mainly because of the shadow of being besieged by reporters in the past. But now, she felt that they weren't scourges. Her temper had always been that if people respected her, she would respect them tenfold. Since Mimi's attitude was like this, her appearance was much more amiable. "Miss Jing, your appearance is really suitable to be an artist. You're very beautiful," Mimi complimented. Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and smiled. "I'm afraid my personality isn't suitable." Mimi couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, her temperament was too cold. If she became an artist, she would probably have more haters. But she was so beautiful, and it was obvious that she was born with it. It was really a pity. One must know that many of those artificial beauties were very popular. Although there were many people in the entertainment circle, there were only a few who didn't rely on their looks to make a living. If there's a chance, I hope you guys can take care of my idol, Xiao Haiqing. In the future, if you feel any discomfort in your body, you can give me a call. I can make a house call, and the consultation fee will definitely be much cheaper than those big hospitals. Jing Yunjiao wrote a string of numbers on the piece of paper on the table and passed it to Mimi. Mimi blankly took it and was a little surprised. She felt that she had profited. This Miss Jing's medical skills were definitely very powerful. She could even save the unconscious Shentong. Moreover, the other old doctors often asked her for advice. She was definitely a godly doctor. Although she was a little young and had a strange temper, The experts on TV were basically like this. Okay. Mimi hurriedly replied. An idol of an idol. She was definitely not bad. Jing Yunjiao responded with a smile. At this time, she was in a good mood and did everything casually. But she probably never thought that in the future, Xiao Haiqing would have a loyal little reporter by her side. Every day, she would ask all sorts of questions and help her fight for space in the company. Not long after, Mimi and the others all left. On the same day, the news of Shen Tong waking up was confirmed. The negative news about Shen Hong naturally disappeared without a trace. However, the most sullen was probably Dr. Fang and the others who stopped Shen Hong from stopping the medicine. These people didn't believe that Shen Tong could wake up so quickly. They didn't even believe that the media said that she was cured by a doctor with the surname Jing. But the truth was that although they didn't believe it, the outsiders believed it. So many media outlets admitted it together, and Shen Tong personally acknowledged it. Others didn't think it was fake. Moreover, when the media interviewed Immortal Crane Hall, there were patients. If the media was fake, someone would have come out to clarify the truth. Immediately, the Immortal Crane Hall became popular. Crane Immortals name Immortal Crane Immortal, Crane, and Immortal Crane. Immortal Crane Hall's name probably existed longer than some of the cultural relics in the museum. It had always been hidden in the bustling city and didn't fight for it. During the war, it led the volunteer medical treatment. Later, when the national healer fell, Immortal Crane Hall's reputation dimmed. However, the medical skills of the doctors there were unquestionable, and there were branches in other provinces. When this news came out, the number of patients in Immortal Crane Hall increased by several times the next day. Celestial Crane Hall used to have a lot of doctors in the past, it was just that the number had been reduced. Jing Yunjiao might as well suggest to Grandma Yu Fu to find some of the Jing family's former disciples, so that they wouldn't be too busy in the future. Not only that, she would think of a way to get back the things that were snatched away by the Li family. Chapter 1057. But she wouldn't allow anything that belonged to the Jing clan to fall into the hands of an outsider. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to face her ancestors. However, the number of patients in Immortal Crane Hall was a matter of time. Right now, Jing Yunjiao was more concerned about Shen Tong's condition. Although she would recover after a period of rest, it was hard to guard against an arrow in the dark. It was inevitable that someone would strike again. Shen Tong could avoid it this time, but it was hard to say what would happen next time. Shen Tong couldn't stay in Immortal Crane Hall forever, so after thinking about it, Aunt Tong, when you're more or less recovered, why don't you stay with Shen Hong at the Shu family? It just so happens that last time eldest uncle also said to let Shen Hong interact more with my cousin Shu Yu. Who knows, maybe it'll help him improve a bit. I think eldest uncle will definitely welcome it, Jing Yunjiao suddenly suggested. Hearing this, Shen Tong hesitated. She already knew in her heart that her sister, who seemed to take care of her completely on the surface, actually had other intentions. The day before Jing Yunjiao's birthday banquet, she felt uneasy about going to the Shu family. Because after returning to the country for so many years, she had never invited her. She even used various reasons to reject her visit. Even if she wanted to meet Jing Yunjiao, she felt that it wasn't good to go rashly, so she gave Shi a call in advance. At that time, she also wanted to test her. But what surprised her was that Shi agreed at that time and said that after she went over, she would introduce her brother-in-law and Shu Yu to her. She even said that it was a little unreasonable that they hadn't met for so many years. At that moment, her heart wavered. Even though she knew that Shi, this big sister, wanted to kill Jing Yunjiao and Xiao Haiqing and frame her, she still had a little hope. After all, they were sisters. Even if they didn't have the same mother, they still had the same blood. So she told Shi that she would go to the market in the northern suburbs in the morning. There was actually a black market there. She knew someone who left her something. It was said to be a very spiritual warm jade that could be used as a protective talisman, so she wanted to buy it for Shu Yu. Other than 1 or 2 staff members around her, no one knew where she would go in the morning, and even if they knew, it was impossible to confirm the time. Only Shunxi. When she was about to go out in the morning, Shunxi called her and asked her to pay attention to her safety. She said that it was lucky that there were few people in the northern suburbs in the morning, so it was impossible for there to be a traffic jam. Unfortunately, he met those so-called crazy fans. She had already retired from acting, so how could she have so many fans? It was even the kind that wanted to kill her. Shun Tong's expression was complicated. She was somewhat resentful and wanted to rush to Shunxi and ask her why. Especially now that she thought about it carefully, what had her sister done to her all these years? She used to think that her sister did it for her own good, but now she felt different. When she first got pregnant, she was so flustered that she didn't even know who the father of her child was. Back then, she only remembered that she was invited to a cocktail party and ended up drinking in a daze. When she woke up, she found herself locked in a cupboard. Her clothes were in a mess, and she knew that something had happened. She waited there for a long time, but no one came to save her until Shunxi appeared. Shunxi said that she had turned the entire hotel upside down and finally found her. Then, she hugged her and cried. At that time, she was sad, but when she saw Shunxi crying so sadly for her, she couldn't bear it and pretended to be strong. Chapter 1058. Although she lost her virginity at that time, she didn't know who the other party was. It was impossible for her to find someone to reason with or sue the other party. Moreover, Shunxi repeatedly said that if she called the police, everyone in the world would know what she had experienced and her reputation would be ruined. Therefore, she listened. But not long after, she was pregnant with Shunhong. She thought that since she was pregnant, she should know what kind of person the child's father was. Otherwise, how could she describe this so-called father to the child in the future? Therefore, she began to look up the list of all the people who had attended the party that day. However, at this time, Shunxi married Xu Yuanturek in a high-profile manner. It turned out that the two fell in love at the party at first sight. Because they drank too much, they had sex. Xu Yuanturek had a promising future at that time, and the Xu family was also a famous family. Shunxi told her that if she looked up the child's father, the Xu family would definitely know that the two sisters had lost their virginity before marriage. The family was unfortunate and would think that they were indecent. She also said that Mr. Xu might not agree to the marriage because of this, causing the child in her sister's belly to lose its father. Therefore, she took a step back for the second time. She made a prompt decision to leave the country. She was young when she debuted, but she was also young when she retired from acting. She had only stayed in the entertainment industry for a few years. Although she had made many classic movies, only those that could withstand the erosion of time were classics. At that time, she was only popular and famous. She had enough money to spend, but she was not considered a rich person. In addition, Shunxi married into such a prestigious family like the Xu family. She was afraid that Shunxi would not have enough confidence, so she gave a large sum of money to Shunxi. She had never been abroad before, and there was a language barrier. Outsiders somewhat despised and insulted Chinese people. Therefore, not long after she went abroad, she was cheated by a landlord. All the money she had brought was gone. She was pregnant to earn living expenses. She did not dare to contact her friends. Fortunately, she met a woman of the same nationality who helped her and gave her a place to live. Now that she thought about it carefully, it was Shunxi who had contacted the landlord for her. Shunxi said that as Mrs. Xu, she still had connections, so she could help her solve this problem. She just needed to live in peace. Otherwise, she would not be so stupid as to confide in the landlord. When she was in trouble, she didn't tell Shunxi, but Shunxi took the initiative to ask about her situation. At that time, the two of them were about to give birth. She was afraid that it would affect Shunxi's delivery, so she didn't say anything. For so many years, Shunxi's help to her had always been spiritual, comforting, and encouraging. She had enjoyed it endlessly, which was far more important than money, so she had never doubted her. 3.5 years ago, when she was about to return to China, Shunxi persuaded her to stay abroad, saying that she could stay by Shunhong's side. In short, it was not allowed or advised. It was just that she really wanted to come back. The moon was bright in her hometown. So what if she did well abroad? After all, she was still a foreigner. Moreover, for so many years, she had not swept the tombs or paid respects to her ancestors. In her dreams, she often dreamed that her parents blamed her for being unfilial. Moreover, so many years had passed, and the world was becoming more and more open-minded. Her past was no longer important, so she insisted on returning to China. Thinking of this, Shen Tong's heart turned cold. She treated Shen Shi as her family, so she thought that everything that she had said and done was for her own good, right? Shen Tong's unworthy and even perfunctory care became an unforgettable comfort and care after this layer of family affection. She had always thought that the two of them depended on each other, but in fact, Shen Tong wanted her life. "Mommy, what's wrong with you?" Shen Hong saw that Shen Tong's face had changed, and he was suddenly a little flustered. "I'm fine. I just thought of the past." Shen Tong waved her hand, looked up at Jing Yunjiao, and said, "Yunjiao, I'll do as you said. When I'm better, I'll go to the Shu family for a while." Chapter 1059. Shen Tong knew in her heart that if she stayed outside, there might be a day when a car or a lunatic rushed out on the road again. Even if she had 9 lives, it wouldn't be enough. Moreover, if she was alone, it would be fine, but now Honga had returned to the country. However, it would be different if she stayed with the Shu family. Although the Shu family was Shenxi's territory, with Jing Yunjiao and Shu Laro around, Shenxi wouldn't easily make a move. Moreover, she wouldn't be the one who would be aggrieved at that time. Since Shenxi didn't care about friendship, why should she be the only one who foolishly thought that this big sister was good? Moreover, she didn't think too much about it before, but now that she knew that Shenxi didn't have good intentions towards her, she couldn't help but think more about it. Why was she stuffed into a dark closet back then? She remembered that room. It was very spacious and very grand. It was definitely one of the few good rooms in the hotel. As long as she investigated carefully, she would definitely be able to find out who was staying there at that time. Not only that, she didn't believe that Shenxi had nothing to do with that matter. She was the first to appear, and it took less than a day to search the entire hotel to find her. She didn't believe it now. The seeds of suspicion sprouted little by little. Shen Tong only felt that those inexplicable things that had happened in the past seemed to be done by Shenxi, which made her shudder even more. Shen Hong wasn't stupid. He could tell that his mother had something on her mind. However, since she didn't say anything, it meant that she didn't really want him to know. He could only observe for himself. Shen Tong's body recovered very quickly. Because she hadn't been in a coma for long, her bodily functions were still normal, and her legs were very nimble. Therefore, she quickly moved out of the red-crowned crane hall. Jing Yunjiao had already told eldest uncle and the others in advance, and they had also agreed. Of course, there was an exception. Jing Yunjiao specially asked eldest uncle to keep it a secret. He didn't tell Shenxi that Shen Tong and Shen Hong were moving in. Not only that, during the few days that Shen Tong was in the red-crowned crane hall, she refused to let anyone, including Shenxi, visit. Therefore, until now, Shenxi only knew about the news of Shen Tong's awakening, but she knew nothing about Shen Tong's physical condition. Immortal Crane Hall's people's character could be guaranteed the most. It was impossible to bribe them. Even the medicine apprentices knew etiquette, righteousness, benevolence, wisdom, and trust since young, not to mention the others. On the day that Shen Tong moved into the Shu family, Jing Yunjiao had already entered the school, so he asked his second uncle to pick him up. As the leader of a company, second uncle was very idle now. His ability to leave things to others was comparable to hers. Xu Wancheng originally thought that it was just an ordinary pickup mission, so he didn't take it to heart at all. However, when he saw that the person he was going to pick up was Shen Tong, he was immediately surprised. He knew that his sister-in-law had no idea that there would be guests at home today. In other words, his sister-in-law's younger sister had entered the house without telling her. What the hell was Xiao Zhao doing? Although he and his brother were investigating his sister-in-law, this woman's surname was Shen. He was prepared to investigate her together, but now, Xu Wancheng's expression was strange, and he felt awkward the whole way. After Shen Tong moved into the Shu family, she lived in the main building. Because She came to the main building every day to show her virtue, Jing Yunjiao specially arranged for Shen Tong to be an eyesore. The moment Shen Tong entered the Shu family, she saw She pushing Shu Yu, who was sitting in a wheelchair and basking in the sun. It looked very peaceful. However, the moment their eyes met, Shen Tong could clearly feel the anger and resentment that flashed through Shi's eyes. She was really stupid in the past. Why did she only realize that She had such a strong opinion of her today? Chapter 1060. As they approached, Shi's signature smile was especially fake. Shu Yu turned around and saw that there were guests. His face was as annoyed as ever. Ever since his legs were crippled, he had been throwing tantrums at home for a long time, but no one in the Shu family cared about him. Tong, why are you here? She asked with a smile, but there was a hint of questioning in her voice. Shen Tong had already discussed with Jing Yunjiao in advance, so Shen Tong was neither slow nor slow. She even said with a hint of surprise, "Big sister, you don't know? Yunjiao invited me to stay with the Shu family for a few days. I was in a car accident some time ago, and I always felt that everywhere was unsafe. After thinking about it, brother-in-law's house should be the best. Unless someone deliberately brought in crazy fans, otherwise, it would be impossible to encounter the same thing again." Shen Tong secretly gritted her teeth. She was disappointed and angry. In this world, there was nothing more despairing than being betrayed by the person you trusted and loved the most. She had spent so much time trying to forget about the poisoned wine, but this sister still refused to let her go. What kind of hatred could make her do this for so many years? In the past, it was fine because she didn't want her life, but now, Tong, it seems like your body has recovered. She secretly clenched her fists. Yes, big sister, I'm lucky. I can walk and jump now, Shen Tong said casually. However, the words walk and jump were heard by Shu Yu. He immediately exploded. Damn, who is this? Shu Wencheng frowned again. Shu Yu didn't recognize his own aunt and cousin. Have you forgotten? You met her once at the beauty salon. When you came back, you asked me. She's your aunt, and the one next to her is your cousin, She explained. Tell them to get lost. I don't want to see them. Shu Yu directly threw the phone in his hand. When Shen Hong saw that the phone was about to hit him, he immediately reached out to block it. Then, he walked forward and placed the phone on his lap. Cousin, if you don't welcome us, then we'll leave. It's not a good habit to throw things whenever you don't agree with us. Scram. Shu Yu glared at Shen Hong and roared again. He hated the man in front of him who was about the same age as him. He was very good-looking, and his eyes seemed to be able to see through his thoughts. Moreover, he had never had any cousins visit him before. Now that his legs were crippled, they came. What was the meaning of this? Laughing at him? Shen Hong was a little unhappy. He thought that his aunt, who was praised by his mother every day, would have a very sensible son. He had long been looking forward to meeting this cousin who was only a few hours older than him, but he didn't expect him to be like this. Shen Tong took a few steps forward and looked at Shu Yu. She was also unhappy. The first time she met this nephew of hers was at her beauty salon. At that time, he had brought a few women, and they called him Young Master Yu. She only knew that he was Shi's son after someone reminded her. At that time, she naturally went forward to greet him, but this Shu Yu didn't give her any face at all. He opened his mouth and said that she was trying to climb up the social ladder, making her, an elder, embarrassed. Not only that, but this nephew of hers even flirted with her in front of others. At that time, she was worried about Shi, so even though she was angry, she could only hold it in and was too embarrassed to tell others. I'm your aunt, and he's your cousin. Even if you don't like him, you should at least greet him, right? Moreover, we didn't do anything wrong to you, so we don't need to be bullied by you. Also, your cousin and I are guests invited by Yun Zhao. It's not up to you to decide whether to scram or not. Chapter 1061. In the past, Shen Tong had always been respectful towards Shen Shi. In front of her, she would never say such things. She wouldn't even raise her voice. However, at this moment, Shen Tong's attitude was very different from before. Shen Shi immediately knew that Shen Tong had found out about her this time. This time, she did it with the intention of killing Shen Tong. That was why she asked Shen Tong about the route she was going to take the day before the accident happened. However, she didn't expect that she was still alive. If she had known, she wouldn't have been soft-hearted in the past. After keeping her for so many years, she still became a scourge. Shen Tong's words seriously provoked Xu Yu. His somewhat handsome face immediately turned ferocious as he stared at Shen Tong and her son like a ferocious beast. He couldn't wait to tear the two people in front of him into pieces. How dare you use her to suppress me? I'm the young master of the Xu family. That bitch is just a piece of trash from the outside world. She's just a chicken that turned into a phoenix. She dares to ride on my head. Sooner or later, I'll kill her. I'll make her beg for death. Xu Yu roared angrily. His legs were already crippled, but his father had personally cut off his tendons and veins with a knife. He even made him apply the 7 Extremes ointment that cut off any hope of recovery. He was the heir of the Xu family, the only son of the Xu family, and a proper young master. What was that wild girl? He had been crazy outside for 18 years. What right did she have to snatch away everything that belonged to him the moment he came back? Now, even his mother's relatives were siding with that Jing Yunjiao and not putting her in their eyes. What right did they have? Xu Yu was a little crazy. At this moment, when Xu Wancheng heard these words, he couldn't restrain his anger. He walked over and kicked Xu Yu fiercely. Xu Yu immediately fell to the ground with his chair. What kind of upbringing did Xiao Zhao have, and what kind of upbringing did you have? If you can't say anything nice, you might as well shut up forever. Xu Wancheng snorted coldly. His voice was as cold as ice and pierced through one's heart. Shun Shi's hands trembled. Yuan Cheng, no matter what, Yu is still your nephew. He's already a cripple now. Why do you have to be so calculative with him? I know you don't like me, but since you think we're an eyesore, why don't you go beg your big brother and ask him to kick us out of the house? His tone was calm, but there was a hint of coercion. Shun Shi hadn't been Mrs. Xu all these years for nothing. Once Xu Yuantarek let her down, it was guaranteed that someone would secretly trip up Xu Yuantarek in a few days. A woman's power should not be underestimated. The husbands of Shun Shi's friends were not simple people. What couldn't they do with a pillow talk? It was basically impossible to completely defeat Xu Yuantarek, but it was still possible to make him suffer some hidden losses. Xu Wancheng snorted coldly. Did she think that he didn't want this hypocritical woman to get out of the Xu family? He and his big brother had already found some things. Shun Shi had secretly bribed a lot of people. Among those who had been assassins for her, many of them had clean backgrounds. She hid the things they cared about the most. He and his big brother worked together but still couldn't find out where she hid them. It was completely the opposite of what she appeared to be. Unfortunately, there was no evidence. She, Shun Shi, could get out of the Xu family, but she had to ruin her reputation. Otherwise, it would be a stain on his big brother's record, and it would hinder his political career in the future. Sister-in-law, you know very well why he became a cripple. What happened before has already been taught a lesson, so it's a new one this time. What's wrong with me teaching him a lesson? If you're not satisfied, you can talk to my big brother. If he thinks that I've taught him a lesson wrongly, I'll get out of this house immediately. Chapter 1062. Xu Wancheng aggressively threw Shun Shi's words back at her. Shun Shi's eyes darkened. The two of us definitely can't drive second uncle away. You apologize to your second uncle. Shun Shi helped Xu Yu up and said, but Yuan Cheng, I'm also a member of the Xu family. Now that there are outsiders here, if word of what you've done gets out, it won't be good for the Xu family's reputation. The servants of the Xu family were also around. Shun Shi's words were obviously a reminder. Xu Wancheng only felt that this time, Shun Shi seemed to be full of thorns. Unlike before, she would listen and smile no matter what was said, just like a fake person. But why was this sudden change? Was it because of Shun Tong and her son? Was it because of their sudden arrival that she was flustered? Why? Shu Wencheng secretly pondered. However, Shun Shi still didn't apologize in the end and pushed him back to the room. But when she turned around, Shun Shi suddenly said to Shun Tong, "Sister, since you're here, stay in the Shu family. Yuan Cheng is also here. Ask him to take you out more often. It's not easy for you to be single for such a long time. Yuan Cheng is a little young, but you're beautiful. It shouldn't be a problem for you to be 10 years older than him." After saying these words, she directly walked away. Shu Wencheng was so angry that the corners of his mouth twitched. "This Shun Shi. Sooner or later, I'll peel off your beautiful skin," Shu Wencheng softly snorted. Then, he took a deep breath and turned around to lead Shun Tong and her son to the main building. A trace of resolute ruthlessness flashed through Shun Tong's eyes. She was usually kind to others, but she wasn't stupid enough to give in to others. "Second young Master Shu, will Yun Jiao be home tonight?" Shun Tong asked after entering the main building. "Xiao Jiao usually stays in the dormitory, but since you moved here today, I think she should be back tonight." Shu Wencheng returned to his usual self. Shun Tong nodded. Actually, she wasn't used to coming to the Shu family so abruptly. After all, other than Shun Shi, she had no relations with anyone else here. However, what Jing Yunjiao said was right. She wouldn't be safe anywhere else. Also, after so many years, she had never understood Shun Shi. The person she knew in the past was just a virtual character created by Shun Shi. If she didn't get close to the Shu family and observe carefully, she was afraid that she would never find out why Shun Shi was targeting her. In the main building, other than Grandpa Shu and Jing Yunjiao, there was only Shu Xingyuan, who had recently moved in. However, this pair of master and disciple had always liked peace and quiet, and they were both obsessed with medicine. Therefore, most of the time, they would drink a few glasses of wine in the pharmacy in the backyard, so the house was temporarily very quiet. In the evening, Jing Yunjiao came back from school and had a brief chat with Shun Tong. When he heard her talk about Shun Shi's reaction during the day, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Sure enough, Shun Tong was one of Shun Shi's Achilles' heel. The closer she was to the Shu family, the more anxious Shun Shi became. At night, when Shun Hong was resting, Shun Tong went to Jing Yunjiao's room and said, "Yunjiao, logically speaking, I am already very embarrassed to stay here, but Aunt Tong, I still want to ask you for a favor." "Aunt Tong, just say it." Jing Yunjiao was a little surprised. Shun Tong had always been a very clear person, so she wouldn't ask easily. "It's like this. I want to investigate something that happened more than 20 years ago." Shun Tong took a deep breath and then continued, "I won't hide it from you. What I want to investigate is the truth behind my pregnancy." Chapter 1063. Shun Tong paused for a moment, her eyes flickering. She still seemed to have a lingering fear when she thought about what had happened that day. "That year, I went to a cocktail party and drank a glass of wine for no reason. I don't remember what happened in the middle of it, but when I woke up, I was locked in a cupboard. My body was very painful. There were only some messy clothes on. It was dark all around. I stayed there for several hours until Shun Shi appeared at night and rescued me. I remember that room. I think it was one of the biggest rooms in the hotel back then. There were only 2 rooms on that floor. I can definitely find out who was in that room at that time. When the accident happened, I originally wanted to call the police, but on one hand, Shun Shi was afraid that I would lose my reputation, and on the other hand, she was afraid that I would offend the rich and powerful, so she held back. But this matter has been weighing on me for more than 20 years. Even today, I still remember the feeling of being trapped in the dark, so I have to investigate, but it's not convenient for me to do it. Yun Jiao, I think Shun Shi knows who that man is. Otherwise, she wouldn't have stopped me again and again. Although I know many people in Jingju, most of them are in contact with Shun Shi. Once I ask for their help, Shun Shi will definitely intervene. Then, I will definitely not be able to find out the truth. She had thought about asking Jing Yunjiao for help for a long time. She didn't believe in anyone else, but Jing Yunjiao could. Although she was young, she didn't know why she felt that she could do it. Jing Yunjiao didn't expect that Shen Tong didn't know who the other party was. He was a little surprised. After thinking for a while, he said, "Aunt Tong, can you tell me in detail who was at the cocktail party? In that case, it will be easier for me to do it." Shen Tong nodded. "I wanted to find a quiet place to stay, but at that time, She was my assistant, so she also attended the party. When I was resting, I saw her talking and laughing with someone. I don't remember who that person was, but I thought that since she married your uncle, that person should be him too. She drank glass after glass with that person. I was afraid that she would get drunk, so I wanted to go forward and remind her, but I was stopped by several people on the way. There were men and women, and they were very polite. They said that they had watched my movie. I was concerned about Shunshi, so I didn't pay attention to them and drank a glass of wine. Then, I don't know why, but I drank a few more glasses. I remember that I was sent to a room with someone. I vaguely remembered this in my dreams. I don't know what actually happened." Jing Yunjiao listened and secretly clicked his tongue. He could tell that Shen Tong thought that she was very stupid at that time. She actually drank the wine handed to her by a stranger. But she didn't expect that her uncle was also at the party that Shen Tong mentioned. However, even if her uncle was young, he shouldn't be a person who would talk and laugh with women, right? Are you sure that she chatted happily with that person? Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but ask. That's right. I remember this very clearly. At that time, that man even touched Shi's waist. I just felt that it wasn't appropriate, so I was in a hurry to find her. She nodded. That day was the turning point that changed the course of her life. How could she forget it? Chapter 1064. Shen Tong looked so sure that she didn't seem to be lying. Jing Yunjiao thought about it and felt that the man didn't match up with his first uncle. "Aunt Tong, as far as I know, my first uncle and she didn't get married for a romantic reason. On the contrary, there were some benefits involved." Jing Yunjiao thought about it and said, "Someone helped me investigate. The reason why she could marry into the Shu family was that she was pregnant with my first uncle's child. It was a shotgun marriage. The reason for the shotgun marriage was at a hotel. At that time, my first uncle was framed and drugged. As a result, he had sex with Shi, who he didn't know at all." "Is that so?" Shen Tong couldn't believe it. She said, "No, how can I believe her words? Only I am so stupid to think that everything she said was true. She said that it was love at first sight. So, it wasn't. Then I think when I saw them, your first uncle's drug was taking effect," she said. Her son told her that Shu Yuantarek was a very charming man. The two of them got along very well. Since her son thought so highly of the man, he was probably not a loose man. It turned out that he had been drugged. However, at this time, Jing Yunjiao felt more and more strange in his heart. Because when he thought about it carefully, he found that something was really wrong. It seemed that Shen Tong and she lost their virginity at the same party. For so many years, She didn't let Shen Tong come to the Shu family. She didn't even let Shen Tong meet his first uncle and Shu Yu. Shen Tong didn't know who had sex with her and was even locked in the closet at that time. Then, could it be possible that they were swapped? Once this accidental idea came out, it suddenly became uncontrollable. Jing Yunjiao suddenly felt that something in his mind was suddenly enlightened. Thinking carefully about Shen Hong's face, although some details were similar to Shen Tong's, the general outline was similar to his first uncle's. It was just that his first uncle had a small mustache on his face, so it wasn't obvious. Jing Yunjiao felt like his head was about to explode. Once he connected the dots and was affected by this psychological effect, he felt that something was wrong. However, Jing Yunjiao wasn't in a hurry to tell Shen Tong these words. What if she got scared and ran away? It would be terrible if Shi seized the opportunity to make a move. Jing Yunjiao pursed his lips and fell into deep thought. If the person who was chatting and flirting with Shun Shi that year was another unknown man, then when Shen Tong was stopped by others, one of them must be her eldest uncle. Since her eldest uncle was promoted, it was reasonable for others to ask Shen Tong to accompany him to drink a glass of wine. However, if her eldest uncle had drunk the wine that was drugged and was in a daze, it was very likely that he had mistaken the two sisters for each other. Shen Tong and Shun Shi were indeed somewhat similar. Their figures and heights were similar. Both of them were very beautiful, and their smiles were very gentle. If people who weren't familiar with them saw them at first glance, it was very likely that they would be confused. Her eldest uncle was a person who didn't care about entertainment news, so it was natural that he didn't know Shen Tong. "Aunt Tong, what color did you and Shun Shi wear at the cocktail party that year?" Jing Yunjiao asked again. He wasn't sure if she still remembered. "Both of us wore white. It was designed by the same designer, but the styles were not the same. One of us wore one shoulder, while the other wore two. At that time, my things were used together with Shun Shi. After all, we were sisters, so there was no distinction between us. The biggest difference at that time was that I only wore a simple piece of jewelry, while Shun Shi wore a set of diamond jewelry of mine." Chapter 1065. Recalling the past, Shun Shi couldn't help but smile bitterly. The reason why she remembered it so clearly was that the other assistant was dissatisfied at the time. She felt that it wasn't good for Shun Shi to wear her diamond earrings, so she quarreled with Shun Shi. It made Shun Shi very sad. She cried miserably and said that she didn't want to go with her. At that time, she felt guilty, so she simply let her wear a set of diamond jewelry. Therefore, she didn't let the other assistant accompany her. Thinking about her life for so many years, it was really not wrong. Who asked her to be so stupid? She really deserved it. When Jing Yunjiao heard that the styles of the clothes were similar, she was more certain. Assuming that Shen Tong was the one that uncle brought back to the room, then the reason why she was locked in the cabinet was probably Shun Shi's doing. After all, no matter how unromantic uncle was, he would never treat a woman that he had just eaten up. But in this case, whose child was Shun Shi's? Was it the child of the man who talked and laughed with her? Or uncle's? First uncle wouldn't be so lucky as to make these two sisters. Jing Yunjiao was embarrassed to think about it. She was quite uncomfortable in her heart. If he was schemed against like this, uncle's heart would probably be as disgusted as if he had eaten a fly for the rest of his life. The scene between the two of them was still considered romantic. If one left and another came, it was really, however, fortunately, there was also something to be happy about. That was, Shen Hong was very likely to be uncle's child, which was her cousin. Regardless of whether the room could be investigated clearly or not, now that these two people were here, wouldn't it be easy to do a DNA test? When she met Shen Hong later, she would find a way to take a strand of hair from his head. As for uncle, it was even easier. Thinking of this, Jing Yunjiao breathed a sigh of relief. If Shen Hong was her cousin, then the Shu family was considered hopeful. Then Shu Yu was destined to be useless. Shen Hong was different. Although he didn't learn to make medicine, he was a decent man. Looking at his nature, he should be a responsible person in the future. Yunjiao. Seeing Jing Yunjiao's uncertain expression, Shen Tong called out in confusion. Jing Yunjiao froze for a moment, then smiled embarrassedly. "Aunt Tong, don't worry. I'll check it out as soon as possible. I also know that hotel. There should be news soon. But, if we find cousin Hong's biological father, what are you going to do?" Jing Yunjiao immediately addressed him more cordially. Shen Tong's face paled, but he still said, "To take advantage of someone's perilous state, I'm afraid he's not a righteous person, right? Although we had a relationship, it's impossible for me to do anything with her. As for Hong he's an independent individual. I won't care if he wants to acknowledge his relatives or not. I respect his decision. After all, he's already an adult." When she returned to China that year, it was because Shen Hong had become an adult. She did not want Shen Hong to become a mommy's boy who only knew how to be filial to his parents. What was the use? If he was too filial, He would be stupid. She hoped that her son could be a person who could distinguish right from wrong, and not an accessory that belonged to her. What if he's a decent person? What if he drank too much or was drugged like you and couldn't help himself? Jing Yunjiao asked again. Yunjiao, I'm already at this age. How could he not have a wife and children? I won't do bad things to his family. I want to find the truth just to give myself and Hong Er an explanation. It's not for a man, Shen Tong replied directly. Chapter 1066. Shen Tong's attitude was very clear, so Jing Yunjiao couldn't say anything. After all, everything hadn't been investigated yet, so it was too early to say anything. After Shen Tong told her some details, she quickly went back to her room to rest. However, Jing Yunjiao couldn't fall asleep, so she went to the dimension to read and study. The next morning, Jing Yunjiao sneaked into Shen Hong's room while he was downstairs. The room was very clean. Jing Yunjiao found 2 short hairs on the bed and sealed them in a self-sealing bag. In the courtyard downstairs, Shen Hong was learning Yang Quan from Shu Yuantarek. The two of them were talking and laughing. Jing Yunjiao brought 2 cups of tea over before the two of them stopped. Uncle, this set of Yang Quan is not bad, right? Jing Yunjiao said with a smile. She was the one who taught Yang Quan, and her grandfather also knew how to do it. The only person in the family who wasn't interested in Yang Quan was her second uncle, Shu Wancheng. In his words, he was still young and should leave this kind of old man's fist for others to learn. Not bad. After practicing for so many days, I feel that my body is much better, and I eat a lot more every day. Shu Yuantarek was very satisfied. Because of work, he spent a lot of time sitting. He wasn't a young man anymore, so it was better for him to practice more. Jing Yunjiao smiled. The reason why her uncle's body was getting better and better wasn't just because of Yang Quan. It was also the result of her secretly changing the ingredients during the holidays. There were also all kinds of medicinal teas that were formulated according to his physique, which were good for his body. Uncle, your hair is white. Do you want me to pull it out for you? Jing Yunjiao took the opportunity to glance at his hair and deliberately said. Although her uncle was already 48 years old, he looked like he was in his 40s. His hair was still very black, but at this time, when he heard Jing Yunjiao's words, he frowned and lowered his head. Jing Yunjiao pretended to pull out 2 hairs. But the light wasn't right. I saw it wrong and pulled out 2 black hairs. Jing Yunjiao snickered and held the hairs in his hand. You little girl. Shu Yuantarek couldn't help but poke her head. His hair was precious. Every day when he went to work, he would look at the Mediterranean Sea in the office building and feel that his hair was a little dangerous. However, the Shu family was a family of pharmacists and also knew medical knowledge. In private, he found some medicine to apply on his hair as a precaution. Jing Yunjiao's nose was very sensitive. When first uncle came closer, he could smell the smell of several medicinal herbs, so he couldn't help but find it funny. On the surface, first uncle looked very strict and serious. Although he was middle-aged, his whole body exuded the stable elite feeling of a successful person. It was impossible to imagine that he would secretly care about small details like hair. Being laughed at by Jing Yunjiao, Shu Yuantarek's expression became slightly abnormal. Jiao, why aren't you going to eat? Don't you have to go to school later? I'll go now. Jing Yunjiao smiled and turned to leave. Before he left, he paused for a moment. First uncle, I have confidence in my medical skills. If there's anything wrong with your hair, you can ask me for help. It's better not to use medicine carelessly. After saying that, he slipped away like a wisp of smoke. Shu Yuantarek's mouth twitched. Shen Hong looked at his hair with a puzzled expression, which made Shu Yuantarek feel even more embarrassed. He coughed dryly. Let's continue practicing. Don't worry about that girl. No, uncle, Yunjiao's medical skills are really good. At your age, if you lose your hair, it will be more serious. With her around, you can definitely prevent it. Shen Hong said insensibly. Suddenly, Shu Yuantarek felt a little scared. What's wrong with my age? Am I very old? You're still young. In the future, you'll know that a man is most valuable when he's in his 40s. Chapter 1067. From afar, Jing Yunjiao could only see Xu Yuantarek and Shen Hong bickering with each other in a serious manner. As they bickered, they continued to practice martial arts together. Their movements and expressions seemed to be synchronized. The moment Jing Yunjiao stepped into the house, she glanced at the annex building again. Her gaze landed on the window on the second floor. She was standing there, staring at her first uncle and Xu Yuantarek. She was too far away to see her expression, but she felt that it was somewhat sinister. Jing Yunjiao lowered her head and looked at her first uncle's hair in her hands. She carefully put it away. It was a pity that she didn't go to the annex building often, and she was there. Otherwise, she would definitely take Xu Yu's sample and check it together. Before going to school, Jing Yunjiao asked her second uncle to send her to the DNA testing center. Second uncle, do you have anything important to do today? Jing Yunjiao's face was serious. What's wrong? Xu Wancheng felt that Jing Yunjiao's expression was a little mysterious. If you don't have anything to do, can you help me wait here for the results? I asked them to speed it up. It should be done in a few hours. During this time, I don't want anyone other than the DNA testing personnel to touch the results. So, second uncle, can you help me? I'll specially cook a delicious meal tonight to reward you. Is that okay? Jing Yunjiao asked with a hint of pleading. Xu Wancheng frowned. Why did this girl suddenly want to do a paternity test? And who did this book belong to? Okay, you go to class. I'll watch over here. Uncle promises that he won't let anyone else touch the results. When you come back, I'll personally hand it to you. Xu Wancheng promised. Jing Yunjiao hurriedly nodded. Xu Yuancheng originally wanted to personally send Jing Yunjiao to school, but she insisted that he wait for the results and not leave. He also didn't like using a chauffeur to drive, so Jing Yunjiao could only take a taxi to school herself. Just as the taxi arrived at school and Jing Yunjiao got out of the car, a person suddenly rushed out with a bottle in his hand. The liquid in the bottle splashed directly at Jing Yunjiao. The students next to her were shocked. They hurriedly fled in all directions and shouted. Jing Yunjiao dodged in time, and the liquid didn't even touch her body. When the liquid fell to the ground, it made a sound that made people's scalps tingle. A pungent smell assaulted their nostrils. It was easy to tell that it was definitely a corrosive substance. Seeing that one bottle was not enough, the person actually took another bottle from the bag beside him and rushed over again. The security guards at the door had already noticed that something was wrong and immediately went to help, but it was not easy for them to get close. After all, they were not qualified to carry guns. How could they fight with people with strong acid with their batons? Who are you? Why did you do this to me? Did Shi arrange this? Jing Yunjiao stared at the person and asked. She had brought Shi and her son into the Xu family. She was afraid that she had touched Shi's bottom line. The person looked a little flustered, but it was obvious that he was a ruthless person. When he heard Shi's name, his eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. It was obvious that Shi was still behind the scenes and didn't leave any evidence. At this time, the person felt that the atmosphere around them was tense. Not only was he not angry, but he even became crazier. He said, Jing Yunjiao, you bitch. Now that you've played with me, you're turning your back on me. Today, I must destroy your face. Jing Yunjiao's eyes darkened. After saying that, the person pointed the gun in his hand at Jing Yunjiao and attacked again. Jing Yunjiao subconsciously dodged and didn't attack, but this time, she knew that this person couldn't be left alive. Looking at the person's attitude, she was afraid that he was going to destroy her face and reputation. If she was taken to the police station alive, in the end, it would really become a love affair in the eyes of others. Chapter 1068. With that thought, Jing Yunjiao's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. Once again, she dodged the strong acid. In a flash, She appeared in front of the man and kicked him in the abdomen. Immediately, the bottles in the man's hands fell to the ground, attracting everyone's attention. At this moment, Jing Yunjiao struck at an extremely fast speed. She struck hard on the man's weak points, but on the surface, it looked like an ordinary counterattack. Not long after, Jing Yunjiao let go of his hand. The man only felt that something was wrong with his whole body. He staggered for 2 steps and suddenly stepped on a glass bottle on the floor. His whole body suddenly fell forward, directly landing on the strong acid that was spilling all over the floor. There was still a lot left in the broken glass bottle. Immediately, the glass pierced into his flesh, and the liquid splashed onto his face. This caused a frenzied scream. However, after a few screams, the man suddenly stopped moving. Everyone looked at each other. After some time, when the police arrived, someone went forward to check. They found that the man was completely dead. As for the cause of death, could it be that he was scared to death by the strong acid that she had prepared? Jing Yunjiao's expression did not change. It's Jing Yunjiao again. Last semester, she was already quite famous. Some students secretly clicked their tongues. Everyone had a tacit understanding. How long had it been since school started? There was already such a violent incident. Moreover, what did the murderer say just now? Turned hostile after having enough fun? Could it be that there was something between him and Jing Yunjiao? Jing Yunjiao silently looked at the person who spoke and did not say anything. Why did this person attack you? A police captain at the side looked up and down at Jing Yunjiao. There was a hint of surprise and frivolity in his eyes as he asked bluntly. This girl was beautiful and the students nearby were whispering some unpleasant words. It seemed that it was caused by wealth and beauty. I was the one who was attacked. Don't you think you're asking the wrong person? Also, this is the first time I've met him. Jing Yunjiao could naturally feel that the other party did not have good intentions and directly said coldly. But didn't he call out your name personally? A lot of people heard it. The captain's face was unhappy. He had just been promoted and everyone was polite to him. The little girl in front of him was really insensible. Jing Yunjiao took a deep breath. If I called out your name, does that mean we know each other? Names are not considered private. Is it strange to know? Moreover, my face and name are quite famous in school. You can ask some people. There are many people who can recognize me. The other party's attitude was not good, so she did not need to be polite. You student. Do you know who you're talking to? What's with the temper of a young boy like him? Now, he's dead. This is not a child's play. If he's dead, he's dead dead dead. Anyway, I've already told you everything I know. The rest of the investigation will be left to you guys. Also, I'm the one who was attacked, so I hope you guys can give me an explanation. Quickly find out who sent this person, Jing Yunjiao said coldly and walked away. Stop. But these words made some people unhappy. Come with us to the police station to assist in the investigation. This person's death is strange. We suspect that you've over-defended yourself. These words, of course, were just to scare the little girl in front of him, so that she would not be arrogant again. Jing Yunjiao's eyes suddenly became as cold as ice. Her ink-black eyes looked over. I'm the victim. You want to take me away? I'm afraid not. You want to make things difficult for us? Little girl, if we let you go to the police station, we'll eat you. The captain said again. Jing Yunjiao was not stupid. In front of so many people, the captain could still control his temper. But if she really went to the police station, it would be different. Chapter 1069. In her 2 lives, she had interacted with people in uniform the most. However, in her previous life, she was a prison guard. In this life, she met more police officers. However, most of them were good people. Even the prison guards were good people. In her previous life, although she had a bad reputation outside, she was still a prisoner. She was young and usually did not cause trouble, so they treated her quite well. It was the first time she met such an unreasonable police officer. Jing Yunjiao was not polite. She directly faced the captain's irritable face. You can try. Let's see if you can take me away today. Mitch, you are just a little girl. I don't believe you can go against the heavens. After speaking to the captain, he asked a few people to step forward. He reached out to grab Jing Yunjiao. Jing Yunjiao also had a bad temper. She was the victim. If the other party had a good attitude, it was not impossible for her to cooperate. However, now that he had forcefully taken action and asked those kinds of questions in front of everyone, she would be a fool if she obediently accompanied. Jing Yunjiao gently dodged. That person grabbed empty air. She took out her phone and directly called her uncle. It was naturally more convenient for the authorities to take action. When the captain saw Jing Yunjiao making a phone call, he felt a little strange. Could it be that this girl has some background? After thinking about it, he was a little scared. However, Jing Yunjiao's original intention was to let her uncle tell his subordinates not to let the captain pester her. However, when Shu Yuanturek heard that she was attacked, he directly asked them to come to the school. Pretending. The captain laughed and said, "It's fine if you don't want to go to the police station. Tell me in detail. How did you know this person? What kind of transactions and conflicts did you have?" I said, "I don't know him." Jing Yunjiao restrained herself. "Impossible. There are so many students. Why did he choose you? Also, my people have already asked the shop owner over there. That person waited here for an hour. When he saw you get out of the car, he rushed up. This proves that the target is definitely you. Oh right, are you a local? Why did you take a taxi to school? Why didn't you stay? Are you engaged in some shady business at night?" The man asked a series of questions, each of which was pushing Jing Yunjiao closer to his downfall. Jing Yunjiao suddenly sneered, "Are you interrogating a prisoner? I just want to find out the truth." "Please cooperate," the captain said again. "The police officers I used to know didn't use this method to investigate things," Jing Yunjiao said coldly. "You mean you used to deal with the police a lot? Don't tell me you're a student during the day and a prostitute at night. Did you know this man when you were working?" The captain sneered and said deliberately. Looking at the temperament of the girl in front of him, she really didn't look like a prostitute. After all, that kind of woman had always been very coquettish. If she had such a bad temper, he was afraid that there wouldn't be any business. However, this little girl dared to speak to him so rudely just now. If he didn't teach her a lesson, how could he feel at ease? Jing Yunjiao did not expect this person to say such words, and immediately slapped him. The crisp sound startled the other police officers, and they felt sorry for her. This new captain's son came from nowhere and had relatives protecting him. That was why he was so arrogant. Recently, many citizens who had called the police were somewhat dissatisfied with him. However, after all, citizens did not fight with officials. Even if he was just a police captain, he was not an ordinary person who could be easily provoked. So, most people avoided him. But now, this little girl slapped the captain's face in front of so many people. He was afraid he would be miserable. Chapter 1070. Captain's son didn't expect a little girl to be so bold. He was very angry. He rubbed his cheeks, spat out a mouthful of saliva, and smiled evilly. "Hit me. Are you attacking a police officer? Now I can take you away." Captain's son sneered. Jing Yunjiao didn't fall for this trick. "I pay so much tax just to raise a trash like you. Good job. I don't know if you can still be so arrogant when Mayor Shu brings people here." Based on the character and ability of the person in front of her, she didn't need proof to be sure that he was definitely a person with connections. She was very disgusted with this kind of person. In her previous life, when she was in prison, she met a woman who was wronged. The reason why she was in prison for more than 10 years was because the real culprit had a relationship with the police and tampered with some things. Although the woman was later rehabilitated, more than 10 years of youth were gone. The mental torture and damage to her reputation were not something that money could make up for. Not only the police station, but even some companies were the same. When she established Yuling Wines and Yunling Pharmaceuticals, There were rules that all employees had to be chosen based on their character, ability, and education. If someone used their connections to recruit an employee, that person would never be hired. Mayor Shu, you really know how to coax people. If Mayor Shu can come, not only will my surname be Sun, I'll even be your grandson. Captain Sun suddenly laughed. He glanced at Jing Yunjiao and said, I didn't expect you to be so arrogant at such a young age. Not only did you call yourself Mayor Shu, but you also said that you pay taxes. You don't even have a job, and you still want to pay taxes? Bah! Jing Yunjiao's eyes flashed. Just now, he spoke without thinking. Naturally, he wouldn't say that he had such a big asset. However, Captain Sun obviously wasn't done. After laughing, he wanted to force Jing Yunjiao into the car. At this time, Captain Sun received a phone call. His face suddenly froze and he looked at Jing Yunjiao suspiciously. Captain Sun, what's wrong? After hanging up the phone, the police officer behind him asked puzzledly. It's fine. Boss said that we have to investigate this case carefully. Don't go back to the police station for the time being. Ask the nearby businesses and students carefully, Captain Sun said. After saying that, he felt that something was wrong. Just now, when his boss called, her tone seemed a little strange, which made him feel a little guilty. Could it be that the female student in front of him really knew Mayor Shu? But that shouldn't be possible. That kind of high and mighty big shot usually only appeared on TV. How could it be so coincidental for him to bump into one? When he thought of this, his heart relaxed a lot. He shouldn't scare himself. Little girl, just stay here. If you don't come with me to the police station, don't even think about going to school. You guys, go to the side and ask about the situation. Right, it's best to ask if anyone knows this little girl. See if they know her background, Captain Sun ordered. He had just joined the police force, and there were still many people who were unhappy with him. However, if he could investigate this little girl's background and find out why the dead man on the ground was targeting her, then he would be able to hold his head up high. Of course, the most important thing was that if this woman was really a prostitute, then he could seize the opportunity to arrest her and make her confess to the pimp. Who knows, maybe he could even destroy an illegal prostitution, gambling, and drug den. The more Captain Sun thought about it, the happier he was. He didn't feel that Jing Yunjiao was very unpleasant to the eye. Chapter 1071. A group of people was loitering nearby. Because there was still some time before class started, a lot of students were waiting at the entrance. Hua Tianxian, Yarrow Bao Bao, and the rest also heard the news and ran over. The moment they heard that Captain Sun insisted on taking Jing Yunjiao away, they were instantly filled with anger. Jing you called your uncle here? That's great. Let's go back and kill this arrogant bastard. Hua Tianxian looked imposing, but after she finished speaking, she restrained her tone. Actually, I've never been to the police station even though I'm so angry. Your life is much more interesting than mine. You go there every 2 to 3 days. You're even comparable to those repeat offenders. Jing Yunjiao was speechless. You call this interesting? If you want, you can beat up that policeman a few times. When my uncle comes later, he won't stop you. Then you can go. Jing Yunjiao said faintly. Forget it. My hands don't hit those stupid things. Hua Tianxian rolled her eyes and looked at him with disdain. Jing Yunjiao and the others waited slowly. After about 20 minutes, a few cars indeed stopped in front of the school gate. Captain Sun took a look and panicked. He stared at the cars and saw that the person who came out of one of the cars was their superintendent. His face instantly turned pale. The other policemen were relieved. They were all waiting to see Captain Sun make a fool of himself. It would be strange if they had a good impression of this kind of person who came out of nowhere. Moreover, the reputation of their police branch was ruined by this Sun guy. As for Mayor Shu, most of them didn't know him. After all, he was far away from the public life. Those who didn't pay attention to politics didn't even know his name. The superintendent's face was gloomy. He glanced at Captain Sun and said, You don't even know how to investigate a case like this. Who told you that you have to interrogate in front of so many people? I heard that you asked Mayor Shu's niece what she did last night, right? If she doesn't live on campus, of course she lives with the Shu family. Did you get kicked in the head by a donkey? You don't even know how to respect the privacy of the victim. From today onwards, you can quit being a police officer. You're such a disgrace. Early in the morning, she was shocked by a call from Shu Yuantarek as soon as she went to work. His men were actually asking questions about the mayor's niece who had just been frightened. His guts were really big. Fortunately, this little girl had managed to escape this time and didn't let that damned criminal succeed. If this little girl's face was really disfigured, then he would have a lot of work to do. Captain Sun was stunned after being reprimanded. Director, I only asked a few questions and the criminal attacked her. Captain Sun admitted defeat. You also know that he's a criminal. Why did you attack her? Can't you go back and investigate? What's the meaning of this nonsense? The bureau chief got even angrier when he heard that. He had never seen someone so stupid. Don't say anything else. Apologize and get lost. There were so many people. If he ruined this little girl's reputation, wouldn't Mayor Shu hate him to death? This subordinate had always let his superior take the blame. Even if Mayor Shu didn't do anything to him, he would definitely feel uncomfortable in his heart. When Captain Sun heard that, the muscles on his face twitched. He pursed his lips and walked over to Jing Yunjiao. Classmate, I'm sorry. You're a great person and don't hold a grudge against me. Jing Yunjiao looked at his attitude. It seemed that he still had some confidence. He was afraid that he would return to the police station and still act arrogantly. Mayor Shu, Jing Yunjiao suddenly called out, making Shu Yuantarek's eyelids twitch. Why did this little girl suddenly? The taxes I pay shouldn't be for this kind of vermin, right? Jing Yunjiao said again. Chapter 1072. When Shu Yuantarek heard this, he immediately understood. No matter how well Jing Yunjiao described his niece, it sounded like she was taking advantage of her position to bully others. However, she was never just the daughter of the Shu family. To her, this identity only represented her family and never her ability. The superintendent felt that it was a little strange. Even Hua Tianxian and the others were confused. Before my niece came back home, she single-handedly set up 2 companies. The taxes she paid to the country. I'm afraid she could set up a few more companies. That's why her tone is a little arrogant, but it still makes sense. Superintendent Zhao, how did this person become the captain of the police force? Don't tell me that the police force is filled with such vermin. Shu Yuantarek said coldly. It sent chills down everyone's spines. When the people around heard this, their eyes almost popped out. They didn't believe Shu Yuantarek's words at all. A little girl set up 2 companies. At this age, Hua Tianxian and the others were even more confused. They stared with their eyebrows furrowed. They couldn't believe it either. Mayor Shu. This. Xiao Sun was recommended by the deputy commissioner. I'm not very good. Superintendent Zhao whispered in front of Shu Yuantarek. It didn't matter whether Mayor Shu was telling the truth or not. He couldn't ask and could only believe. The higher the rank, the more powerful the Mayor Shu was. Therefore, although he had reprimanded Xiao Sun with a harsh tone, it was only for show. Otherwise, if Mayor Shu got even angrier and really kicked Xiao Sun out, he would have a hard time. When Shu Yuantarek heard this, he sneered. Fine, the deputy commissioner recommended him? He dared to send such an idiot to the police station. How long has he been working there? If there's any wrongdoing in this case, each and every one of you. Shu Yuantarek's face was frighteningly cold. He didn't continue speaking. But when Superintendent Zhao heard this, he immediately knew that Mayor Shu was angry. He hurriedly said, Not long, not long. It's only been a month. Shu Yuantarek didn't look at him. Instead, he looked at Jing Yunjiao and said, Don't worry. This tax will naturally be used on the blade. You go to class first. I'll take care of the rest. It seemed that he hadn't thoroughly investigated the people under him for too long. It was a coincidence that they met him today. If they didn't meet him today, this little son would probably start to harm the people of this region, right? That deputy bureau chief was originally a smart person, but after a long period of not tormenting them, he became tired. Any kind of scum could be sent to those positions. He had also climbed from a small official position to where he was today. Of course, he knew what the so-called connections meant. The people of the country valued relationships, and as the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs ascend to the heavens. If there was someone in the family who was successful, their relatives and friends would want to help them get benefits. He knew this in his heart, and he could not completely stop it. However, those who had the ability to get in through connections could still tolerate it. At the very least, they could do something practical. But now, even this kind of hooligan could mix in. It was hard to tell if he was an official or a bandit. It had to be cleaned up. Shu Yuantarek's face was ugly. Superintendent Zhao was a little uneasy. When he mentioned the deputy bureau chief, it was also a gamble, but looking at the current situation, it seemed that there would be a lot of people who would suffer. Jing Yunjiao listened to her uncle's words and returned to school with Hua Tianxian and the others. Not far away, her classmates roughly knew her identity and were all shocked. They still remembered that in the past, someone had posted on the school forum that Jing Yunjiao was an orphan. She came from a poor family and had a bad character. She had hooked up with a rich man. It was completely misleading. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.